So now we're going to talk about the Micasense dual MX camera. So it's pairing both a red and blue edge sensor. So here's the box. As you can see, it's in a nice hard case. So we're going to go ahead and open this up. So we got some product information. Okay, so we got both sensors right here to the side. So we'll pull them out. So as you can see, it's dual mounted with a sky mount directly on top of both. You have the red edge and the blue edge sensor. It's got 10 bands in total. So you have 5 bands on each camera, and they're covering the wavelength all the way from green to near infrared. So with all that information, you're going to be able to see a lot of spectral differentiation when you're looking at anything like vegetation or water or anything like that. Here on the right, you do have your sunshine sensor. So what this is able to do is on days where it may be a little overcast or cloudy, it's going to allow you to match data sets from previous flights to ensure that the spectral differentiation is somewhat comparable. So this is required for all multispectral data. It's not like satellite data where you're able to use a masking tool to try and remove like clouds or anything like that. For drones, especially when we're below the cloud level, we require a sunshine sensor. So this gets top mounted on the M300, and of course this goes into your single or your dual if you're going to be running this with a P1 or an L1. But you can have the ability to then have this as a single, technically, camera on the M300 if you were to dual mount and have a secondary payload as well. On the bottom, we just have some mounting accessories. So here you can see just some carbon fiber plates to get it all kind of put together, some additional rubber dampeners, and some Loctite to make sure everything's really well secured. And then as well on this side, you just have additional cords and cables and accessories as well. So everything you're going to need to run a multispectral camera from Micasense is all integrated into this MX dual package. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this camera in detail and go over some of the key specs. So again, it's a 10-band multispectral camera. So you have everything all the way from blue, green, red edge, and near infrared that's going to be captured from this camera, which is a pretty wide swath of spectral imagery that you're going to be able to go through and either create new algorithms or just use already existing algorithms like NDVI, TGI, or anything like that. So here we have the Wi-Fi, which is going to be able to connect to your phone to look at the images that are directly loaded onto these cameras. And then on this side, we have the SD cards. So each SD card comes with 128 gigabytes, which is plenty of storage for this camera because each individual camera is creating a 1.3 megapixel sized image, which is only about 8-bit. So it's a pretty compressed TIFF file. And then it has obviously the RGB. The RGB camera is a 3.6 megapixel camera. So you're still going to be able to get some clear panachromatic imagery. But again, obviously the point of this sensor is not about high resolution RGB. That's for truthing. It's more about the spectral imagery and what we're able to see, what the eye can't see, of course, by using some of these spectralism. Who's going to really want to use this camera? I mean, this camera is really geared towards people who are agrologists or are environmentalists. Of course, ideally for this camera, you're going to be able to fly this over a crop, and you're going to be able to see the differentiation of health between one part of the field and another. So obviously, the most favorable of those algorithms would be a simple NDVI. But with this camera, because you have 10 bands, you can really start to separate and understand what's happening with the crop. So this camera can be used for field trials as well. So at the university level, if you're looking at trying to understand maybe what's happening at a micro scale, this would be a great camera to start with instead of going to something as high end of a hyperspectral camera, which of course can get into it gets into a totally different price margin and becomes more expensive when you're looking at either head wall or specimen sensors. But this is a great camera to get into the multispectral space. Again, not only for agrologists, but of course environmentalists, as I said. So if you're doing anything like forestry monitoring for invasive species like pine beetle, or if you're doing something like invasive species for like Phragmites, you're going to be able to utilize this camera to create classification data sets to be able to separate that vegetation away from other types of vegetation. And so you're going to be able to define areas and be able to calculate the area of particular types of vegetation from another, which with a higher number of bands is going to be able to give you more data at that bit level and be able to understand and differentiate different types of vegetation. So that's why having more bands is beneficial for classification purposes. So this is a great little multispectral sensor if you're looking at one that automatically integrates directly to the DJI M300 and makes it a lot easier, and it's all plug and play. So kudos to Micasense for making a really nicely integrated dual sensor that just goes and works right with the M300. Again, if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to AirWrx and our team, our support team. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have about this particular product and potentially providing demonstrations if required. So if you want a multispectral camera, this is the one you're probably going to want to choose. So feel free to take a look at some of the specs on our website. We have this product up obviously in our store as well for sale. But yeah, great little camera, and highly recommended for that multispectral space.